What's happening, YouTube? I do have fun. What's going on, YouTube? Let a few people trickle in, and we'll get this party started. I've been wanting to do this stream all day, but I had stuff going on, but I had a few minutes here. I was just running around with my boy and my nieces, and they were jumping on me, and I was being the Incredible Hulk, and now I have a minute. So, anyway, here we are. But 2020 really has been the great revealer. And it's been that on so many levels. But in one way that I really appreciate is how it's revealed the contrast in socialization between what you get in public school versus what you get with homeschool. Let's take your average public school student. Let's take little Johnny and what he's experiencing in the year 2020. Little Johnny wakes up in the morning and his frantic, scared parents tell him when he goes to school, he has to wear a mask all day long, and that he needs to follow school policy and listen to his teachers. So when he gets to school with his mask, his teachers rush him into a classroom. They make sure that he does not socialize at all with any of the other children. And he has to sit at least 6 feet apart from all the other children. And in many schools, they even have dividers. And at lunchtime, he has to eat alone. And at gym time, he can't run around and jump on and play and sweat and have fun with all the other children. Because we now have an entire generation of publicly educated, I use that term very loosely, publicly indoctrinated children who are going to school and are being taught that their classmates, that their teachers, that humanity itself is a virus. So I think as a society, we need to sit back and say, and I really do get great pleasure out of this, how can you send your child to public school? Aren't you worried about the socialization? I remember, because I knew I was going to homeschool before I even had children. I got a bachelor's degree in history education. I got a master's degree in special education. I worked in the school system, and I saw what went on in those teachers' lounges. And not only would I not allow them to educate my child, I wouldn't let these people anywhere near my child. The things they talk about. And hey, Brett, glad to catch a live stream. Yeah, for anyone that doesn't know that reference, a long time ago when I broke in and I was going to red pill the world, I went by the pseudonym Tom Anderson, which was a reference to Neo in the Matrix. That was his government name. Anyway, now I go by my government name, Brett. Where was I? Oh yeah, so I got my degrees in education. I taught in high schools before I started my business, Classical Learner, where I work one-on-one teaching families about homeschooling and helping them structure unique and customized strategies that they can use to better educate their children, teach them business and whatnot. But coming through that, I knew for a fact I was not going to send my children to public school. And that was before I had them. And I remember when I first started telling people that, and this was everyone. I told my parents this, and everyone, you'd have the same response, right? It would say, Brett, aren't you worried about the socialization? And at the time I thought, I remember public school. It felt a lot like a penitentiary. High school, it felt more to me like a jail cell, a penitentiary. 'Cause I don't ever want to be like you, and I don't want to do the things you do, and I don't ever want to be you. Want to be just like you. But high school, I was like, socialization, sitting between 4 concrete walls for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 15 years, having to raise your hand every time you have to take a piss. You can't speak out of turn. You can't speak creatively or say anything that's unsanctioned by the teacher. I mean, you can't even go against, a lot of these teachers are so radically progressive, that you can't go as far as, you go to you're a public school student, right? Like I wrote a book, a children's book, The Right to Bear Arms, which is about teaching children the Second Amendment and the importance of not surrendering their ability to defend themselves to government. But you take a high school student who tries to defend the right to bear arms, and he might be called to the principal's office, right? Because in that backwards demonic world, they'll be like, we have a guy that likes guns. We can't have this. He needs to be re-educated. Socialization, public school. Are you a denier? Are you a spreader? So you have these children, like you take little Johnny today, and he wakes up in the morning and they say, you better listen to your teacher. And he gets to school and his teachers tell him he has to have on his mask and he has to stay 6 feet apart from his classmates, and he can't run around, he can't play with them because his classmates are asymptomatic carriers of a virus. And if he plays with them, that virus will spread to grandma and she'll die, and that will be his fault. Can you imagine when these children grow up, the germaphobes they're going to be? How are they going to interact in the world? I would argue what they're doing, the psychological damage they're doing to children, is tantamount to child abuse, in my humble opinion. I don't know if you're allowed to have an opinion, but in my opinion, that's what's happening in these public schools is child abuse. Because these children are being made into extreme, what's the term for germaphobes? A person who thinks they have every disease they hear of. I forget the term. Do you guys know the term? Not a germ. There's a formal term for it. A person who thinks they have, every time they hear of a disease, they think they have it. Anyway. But these children are going to grow up and they're going to be terrified of germs and terrified of humanity and having social relationships and hugging and loving and a hypochondriac, right? They're creating a generation of hypochondriacs, which is a psychological disorder. I don't know how anyone could argue they're not doing serious psychological damage to children at this point in public schools, which would mean public schools by their very nature right now are child abuse. But I remember when I first started telling people about homeschooling, and they said, aren't you worried about the socialization? So now I look at anyone that sends their child to public school, and listen, I get it, I'm not trying to bash on you. We all have situations, the world is changing rapidly, but all I'm trying to say is we as parents should always try to adjust to the world. So even if you can't do it right away, start making plans so maybe you can do something different 12 months from now, whatever it might be. I get it. But they said, aren't you worried about the socialization? And now I would look to any individual sending their child to public school and say, aren't you worried about the socialization? Aren't you worried that if you send your child to public school, they're going to develop hypochondria, that they're going to be taught that they shouldn't have social interaction and hug and run and play with other children? And what are the long-term psychological effects of that? What type of psychological damage is public school doing to children? Hasn't the world turned on its head? But let me tell you a story about homeschoolers, right? Because it was never true when it was just misunderstood. When people would say, aren't you worried about socialization? Aren't you worried? You, sir, need to consider the socialization. You are an irresponsible parent taking the education of your child into your own hands. Oh man, the things that people think. I'm in one of the worst states, one of the centers of Babylon, the Tower of Babel. And allegedly over the weekend, in spite of government mandated shutdowns, I went to a children's birthday party, actually hosted at a business who allegedly didn't give us any pushback at all about not wearing a mask, because the person who was hosting the party told them, listen, if you want my business, you're not going to say one thing about a mask or anything like that to anyone who shows up at your establishment. And the business owner, of course, said, I've been getting hammered by these shutdowns. I don't care about the mask. Yes, we can have your party. So I allegedly, I'm not saying this happened, I'm just saying it's been alleged, that I attended a children's birthday party over the weekend with 20 children, 18 of whom were homeschooled. And none of these children were afraid of each other. None of these parents were afraid of each other. No one worried about masks. We all walked in and greeted each other with big smiles and big hugs, and we shot shit and had fun and made fun of Bill Gates and talked about the coming establishment of the New World Order and the Great Reset and establishment of global communism. And we mocked it and made fun of it. And as we did that, the children, they ran around together and they hugged each other and they jumped around and they were human jungle gyms and they did all the things children should always do. So let me ask you a question. Which group of children, those homeschool children who all know each other from our homeschool group and they're together all the time, having a blast all the time, are those children or the public school children being told to wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart from each other and spray chemical disinfectants on their hand that cause cancer every 3 minutes? Which children are going to be better educated for socialization when they grow up? Oh, shit. Catch you later, YouTube.